so let's turn it on. G'day guys, I'm here today with... Oh, we've lost him already! I'm here today with Glenn Twiddle. Glenn Twiddle, who's just had his ass handed to him by none other than... Who was it?
Jeff Fennick. Just left Jeff Fennick's house. I'm embarrassed that the only time we could catch up, Joss, was when I'm driving from Jeff Fennick's house to Brisbane. So I got some time. I don't have a good internet connection, but I've got time for you, brother.
Oh, man. If anything, it's going to be the most entertaining interview I've had in a while, so let's do it. Glenn, dude, what do you do? We know you're bringing guys like Arnold to Australia, sharing stages with John McGrath, but who are you? What's your background, and how the hell did you pull that off?
You know, I guess, man, I was living in Ipswich, and a mate of mine, I was a guitar player and a singer, and I will just say up front, apologies to your audience, Joss, because, you know, this is not the ideal environment to be doing this, but hey, when you're doing, literally today, I was up at 4 a.m., and my GPS tells me I will be home at 3:07 a.m., so I'm about to be doing a 23-hour working day, plenty of driving and all that, but that's just the hustle that's got to be done. But so just apologies up front for how informal this is. But
wait, you mean you don't have a 4-hour working week?
Yeah, no, I've spent some time with her actually, and I tell you, that may be a nice metaphor, which is all it is, because Tim Ferriss is a freaking hard-working dude. Oh, there we go, we've dropped the phone again.
It's all good.
But yeah, Tim Ferriss is a hard-working dude, man. Yeah, so nice metaphor, not so real. Let me put it that way.
Depends on what you want to do, I guess. I think it's what I see it as is you need to get your systems in place and actually have a structure for your business, instead of just stuffing around with things that don't matter. But
for sure, and I guess mate, I haven't quite worked that out yet. So I'm still doing 23-hour days. And, you know, but then I'm still I'm still, you know, like there's a metaphor I heard once that a jet plane, when it's on the way up, uses up 80% of its fuel in takeoff and 20% gaining that altitude to get to wherever it's going. So if that's the case, I'm still on the 80% on the way up, using up all the fuel, and then when I get wherever the hell I'm going to go, then I'll coast. But at the moment, there ain't no balance, there ain't no coasting. It's grind, man.
Okay. So how did you start, man? Because you said you grew up in the Aussie bush, like out in Ipswich, the sticks.
Bush. I don't know if Ipswich is exactly the bush, but yeah, I was working as a singer guitar player, and when I was doing that, I would go bush. Like I'd go to Stanthorpe and Warwick, and I'd head out. The further west I went, the more successful I was as a musician. Because, like, maybe the bar got lower, you know, the more you went out bush. So I used to go out to Warwick and Toowoomba and Stanthorpe and all that, playing guitar and singing and stuff. And it was, I didn't do anything during the week. And a mate of mine said, why don't you get into, I'm just into this business called real estate, and I'm having a look at it. Do you want to have a look at it with me? And so I did. But I originally started out with entrepreneurship and stuff as a hobby. And music on the weekends was my living.
Yeah.
And so I was forced as part of that company to start reading books like Think and Grow Rich and The Magic of Thinking Big and, you know, Success System That Never Fails and, you know, How to Win Friends and Influence People, all those classic personal development books. And at the start, I rolled my eyes at them and I thought, Jesus, you know, if I'm going to read a motivational book, I might as well save my $20 because I'm motivated, you know, why freaking bother? And I used to think that stuff was only read by Amway people, you know, so yeah, but because I was in this company, even as a hobby, just to be in that culture, you had to all read the same book every month. And so I was forced to do it, and I tell you, I'm so glad I was, because it was that reading of those books that led me to personal development, that led me to thousands of hours of study of how brains think, how minds work, how my own mind works, how other people make decisions, etc., that's led me to doing what I'm doing today. If it wasn't for those thousands of hours of professional and personal development, I wouldn't be socializing and in business with Arnold Schwarzenegger, Richard Branson, Eric Thomas, John McGrath, all of my idols that I was studying now my peers and work with me. It's freaking unbelievable, mate.
It's insane. So, okay, so how does that go from I'm learning personal development books to I'm sharing stages with these guys and talking to thousands of people each and every year?
Yeah, well, it went in levels, man. Is the first couple of little events that I did. Now, first off, I started off as a practitioner in real estate, so I had to get competent at that. But the problem was, what I ended up finding is the way that I was taught to do business in that company, and I bet you a whole bunch of your listeners are taught business that way, was to prospect for business. I mean, making those freaking calls by their thousands in any given month, thousands of the bastards, in order to get a handful of people to say maybe. And it killed me. Like, it literally killed me where I went, because you think about this, I went from being a nice guy, you know, on the weekend that everyone liked, the musician, and then on Monday morning I went to the bloke that had the prospect that everyone hated when you talk about percentage-wise. 95 people out of those 100 people that I called on every couple of days, because we're expected to make a couple of hundred calls a week, 95% of those people just hated me. Not because of me, but because of the role that I was playing, meaning prospecting for business. So I needed to find a way, because I couldn't have dealt with that forever. I was doing well, but I couldn't have done it. So I needed to find a way to get those 5 people that were going to say maybe to me in the cold call method of attracting business. I needed to find a way to get them to call me rather than me calling them. So I set out on a journey of thousands of hours to try and figure out marketing. Because I thought to myself, no other business does business this way. You know, no doctor calls you up and says, hey, you know, I'm an expert in my field. How's your heart? You're in a high stress position. Do you want me to give it a free check? No one does business that way except these businesses like real estate, which was the business that I was in, real estate agency, you know. So I had to go on this search that spanned the globe, spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to figure out how to get them to call me. You know what I mean?
How do you change that dynamic? How do you become the person that people want to call and that they actually enjoy speaking to, so you don't become this pest, this parasite pest that has to cold call them all the time?
Yeah, well, and that was the million-dollar question that ended up being the million-dollar question. And, I mean, the answer took me thousands of hours, hundreds of thousands of dollars, but we ended up finding the answer. But there's a whole bunch of principles, but here's the biggest one. If I wanted to have 20 people say maybe to me in a given month, and I wanted to avoid making the 2,000 calls that got the 20 maybes, that if I wanted that to happen, sorry, I'm just trying to mess with my phone here where it...
Be safe.
I can not bloody... I don't know. Am I still coming through okay? Because I've screwed up and I've accidentally
through fine. We actually had a few people saying... people want to let you know, we don't hate you, Glenn. We don't hate you.
Oh, good. I'm glad, because you used to. When I was cold calling you used to. But so, here's the big principle, and there's a whole bunch of depth, but let me give you breadth for the moment. That it's not one... Say I needed 20 people to say maybe in a given month, right? That it's not one way you're going to get 20 people. It's 20 ways you're going to get one. And that was the big learning, is I needed to figure out this... And there was no one marketing media to one. So what we're doing right now, that might be one client that's listening in here that wants to get famous in a marketplace, that says, shit, that Twiddle dickhead, he's on the grind, but he's figured it out. If with a bit of hard yakka, I've got the ability to work hard. I want to get famous to my little niche here, so I'm going to call Glenn, right? So doing this call might be one of my 20 ways this month that I get someone to give me a call. But that's the overlying principle, is I learned how to be what many experts say that you shouldn't be. You've heard the term, don't become a jack of all trades, you know, and master of none, master one thing. Well, I did the opposite. I became a jack of all trades when it came to marketing.
Okay.
And a master of none on, meaning confidence in at least 80% of the results, I nailed that 20%, and I got good at everything. So I'm not a Facebook expert. I'm an absolute amateur compared to a Facebook expert, the masters. Yeah. But I learned enough about Facebook marketing that I could be competent about 20% of what I needed to know that gets me 80% of the result. So I did pretty good at Facebook. I do pretty good at direct mail and copywriting. I do pretty good at speaking on a stage. I do pretty good at running events. I do pretty good at everything. And the incredible of nothing has resulted in me relatively omnipresent to my target market, so they just can't avoid me. Like me or hate me, there ain't a person in real estate that doesn't at least have an opinion about me. And that was the first hurdle to overcome when I started coaching this stuff to real estate agents. As a coach, was I didn't want to hear Glenn who. I wanted to hear Glenn Twiddle. I think he's a tosspot. Glenn Twiddle, I love him. Glenn Twiddle, he saved my financial life and took me from a standing start to $1 million agent in a couple of years. What I didn't want to hear is, who's that guy? So there's, I suppose, a few big broad concepts that sort of took me from starting out to running seminars, teaching what took me lots of learning, lots of painful experience of testing, trial and erroring to see what works and what doesn't, that left me with a system that really can get a person, whether it's a real estate coach like me, whether it's a real estate agent like I formerly was and like I still primarily work in the real estate world, getting real estate agents to go from being untrusted and not liked to being known, liked, trusted, and heaven forbid, actually even respected in their communities. And if I can do that with a real estate agent, that's why I'm having a whole heap of other businesses now come to me, that if I can make a real estate agent, heaven forbid, respected in the community, then Jesus, if you own a business that's any less hated than a real estate agent, then I can do it even quicker for most businesses,
Oh, man. All right. So, how does the process work? How do you look at where they need to be and how to create that omnipresent presence in their marketplace?
Well, I mean, the first thing is for any entrepreneur, you've got to look at who your marketplace is. And it was far easier for me to be that omnipresent, celebrity, if you will. See, the injection of celebrity is another principle that we might touch on in a moment, but let's talk about omnipresence in the first instance. First thing I needed to do was get them to know who the hell I am. That have multiple media. And it was far easier for me to do that with a clearly defined, narrowed down audience. In my case, there are 50,000 real estate agents in Australia. There's probably about another 10, 15,000 in New Zealand. So I started with Australia, and I thought, right, they're my targets. If you in this country, I bought every database that I needed to start fishing in. And it was far easier for me to be omnipresent to a clearly defined marketplace than if I tried to be a marketing expert to every entrepreneur in Australia. So I suppose niching, if you will, was my first step, and mine happened to be the niche that I had an affinity with because I was one of them. You know what I mean? So that was the first step, is for any of your viewers. Now, if your business is geographic in nature, say you own a restaurant, then really your area, your marketplace is going to be primarily geographic in nature. So you want to clearly define who your targets are. And once you've clearly defined them, you can start figuring out, based on who that target market is, where do they look? Where are their eyeballs? If you're selling things to the 18 to 24-year-old market, say the WWF, say your product caters to the masculine, teenage, and early 20s audience. Well, you're going to be marketing in very different places than you are if your audience is kind of like my audience, 35 plus. Now, I'm not saying there's not a whole heap of 20s people in their 20s in real estate, but I'm saying, en masse, my audience are over 30. So I might use different media than someone
Lost you.
who's 8 years old and she loves shotguns. Okay, what was the last thing you got? Oh, didn't get.
I heard you might use different media. Do you want to try turning off the video? That might be killing it a little bit.
Okay, because no one wants to look at me freaking drive like this.
Exactly.
So let me mute that. Let me do a bit of messing around here. Hopefully I'm not going to kill myself.
Let's hope not.
Okay. Are we back with Skype?
On Skype.
Okay, and let's mute video. There we go. Are we muted?
Yeah, muted.
Sound's still coming.
Sound's still coming. Seems much better.
Okay, cool. I can turn off my lights. Okay, cool. So, so I was just saying, different media are going to work for different bodies, and my 7-year-old is big on shopkins right now. So if you're marketing to 7-year-olds, you're going to play in a different world than you are if you're marketing to a 40-year-old. You know what I mean? No, that's an exaggeration. It's just that I just left my, I've just spent a week with my 7-year-old and my 9-year-old, and I know what media they use. If you're marketing to a 9-year-old or a 13-year-old, I've got a 13-year-old kid, and you're marketing to them, then you better be using YouTube pre-roll videos, or you're not in the game, because that's where the teenager, the early teenager is living. They are living on YouTube. So you need to be using YouTube pre-roll videos, For the 35-year-old, you better be all in on Facebook or you're not in the game, So, kind of a long answer to a short question.
All right. No, that makes sense. It's all really good.
Oh, and now the rain comes, brother. I hope that doesn't make it... Hey? How's
that? Love it. Whereabouts are you now?
Apologies triple fold for the Facebook audience. I'm just north of Newcastle.
Brilliant. Oh, man. Keeps it entertaining. I like it.
So is it unlistenable, or are we still good?
No, we're still good. We're still actually really good now. The audio has become great.
Okay,
so,
cool.
Tell me,
Cool.
We were talking about come celebrating your audience. How do you actually get... how did the seminars come to the game? What was that all about?
Well, probably because, like anyone who goes and sees a Bon Jovi concert, there'd be some part of most people my vintage that would dearly love at some level to be a rock star, right?
Okay.
So, everyone who goes to see a Bon Jovi concert would dearly love to be up there on stage with Richie Sambora playing guitar with John Bon Jovi, So the guy who did thousands of hours worth of seminars kind of thought, shit, it'd be great to be up there on that stage one day. And the bloke who used to play guitar as a job, probably, I wanted to be a rock star. So the closest I was ever going to be a rock star was probably be a seminar presenter. And turns out I'm better at that than I am at singing or playing guitar. So it was probably an element of that. But then also, I found a niche that dearly needed what I had, meaning they are still taught that thing that tortured me. There's still coaches out there telling them that dialing for dollars, and the more no's you get, the closer you are to a yes, and you've got to prospect. And what they mean by prospect is door knock and cold call. So if there's a niche out there that is still being tortured to death with a 9 out of 10 fallout rate, 9 out of 10 people that start in that niche, in that industry, are not in that industry within 2 years. So I choose them up because of that methodology of prospecting. So I felt, if I want to be a rock star, seminars is going to be as close as I get to it. And I've got a message they need. And I felt that if it's changed my life and I've figured something out that industry needs, I felt an obligation that I had to give it to them in the best way that I could. And delivering it en masse to seminars, and the more people I can affect with that message. And I'll tell you, half my industry still just think I'm an idiot for trying to buck the trends. But the other half that either tolerate or, heaven forbid, embrace what I've got to share and suggest that does buck the old school trends, they've made, I owe them my life, because they've given me a life that I never thought possible kid growing up in Ipswich idolising Arnold Schwarzenegger, you know, in later years idolising Richard Branson from an entrepreneurial perspective, idolising John McGrath as a real estate icon, idolising Eric Thomas, my favourite motivational speaker. You know, all of these idols of mine, now I get to call friends, and I've socialised with all of them. I've been at Arnold Schwarzenegger's house a couple of times for parties and functions. I owe that to those people at those seminars who have embraced what I've taught. They've applied it in their business. They've earned themselves, you know, in some cases, millions of dollars, and I get to live the life of my dreams because of that. So, mate, I love it.
That's awesome. That's so good. So, what does the next couple of years hold in store for you, mate?
Well, actually, man, you asked how did seminars come into it. Let me tell you that and let's just quickly touch on this celebrity thing. A lot of people look at me now and, you know, they think, shit, I'd love to do that or whatever. But understand, it was a case of levels. So my first ever event that I did, I had to beg like 20 people to come. You know, and they're probably all mates and family and friends and just, you know, ex-colleagues that I'd worked with in real estate. I just begged. So I had 20 people in the room. The next event I probably had, you know, it went well, so I begged at 35 or something. You know, and I just, for a while there, I was an REIQ speaker, so I spoke as, you know, now, you know, it was a great time in my life and I loved it, but an REIQ speaker teaching the legislation is kind of not much different than a TAFE teacher, you know what I mean? So I did that for a bit, and after a couple of years of kind of just grinding it out with those, you know, just a couple of dozen bodies in the room, I went to the next level and I begged John McGrath to come to an event of mine. And because John at the time was the celebrity version and still is the celebrity legend of what it is we do. And heaven forbid I just begged and John said yes. And that was level one for me, doing an event with John McGrath. And then I took every cent of profit in my business and then some profit that I didn't yet have, and I invested it in the next level and I invested in the next level. So, you know, this didn't happen overnight. As I went from level 0 out of 10 to 2 out of 10, where I had 12 people wanting to listen. Then I went from level 2 to level 6 out of 10 when I begged John McGrath to come and work with me. And there were levels in between where I'd do an event where none of the speakers were a name, but because I had 10 no-name speakers over a 2-day conference, I got 100 people in the room. You know what I mean? So we went up in levels, but here was my secret. Every ounce of profit, I parlayed into the next thing because I wanted to see what else was possible. Who else would say yes to me? Eric Thomas, I don't know if your audience have heard of E.T., the hip-hop preacher, right? He's just unbelievable. Google him, check him out, he's brilliant, right? When E.T. said yes, I thought, oh, if Eric Thomas is going to say yes, who else? And it was Eric that asked a question at one of our events that we did early in the piece. He said, if you weren't afraid, write down what your goals would be. And it was another coach, Jed Xavier, that asked a similar question, what would your goals be if you couldn't fail? And one of them might have asked, you know, those two speakers asked me those two questions, but I can't remember which one asked me which, right? But anyway, and the answer to that question when both of them asked me it in a seminar, I was still sitting there taking notes, right? That was the secret to my success, is going to seminars and listening to them and doing and applying what I've learned. So when they asked that question, I wrote the same goal. Well, if I wasn't afraid, I would ask my childhood Arnold Schwarzenegger to headline at one of my events. And then when Jed Xavier asked me the same question, I wrote down the same goal. But remember, that's a pretty big caveat. If you can't fail, what would your goal be? Well, that's a pretty big if, you know what I mean? But that was the goal I wrote down both those times. And then I thought, well, now that I've written it down, I better at least investigate to see what would have to happen for that goal to happen. And let me give you a little insight, and this is an embarrassing admission. I first reached out to Arnold's people's people, because you don't just call Arnold up on his phone, hey, Terminator, what's it going to take, right? You have to talk to people's people. I first wanted to just get a quote to see what it would take, because at some level, the dickhead who grew up in Ipswich wanted the quote to come back as millions of dollars, because that's what I heard it cost to put on these mega headliners. I heard that Donald Trump's speaking fee back years ago was $2 million or something to get him out to Australia. And I thought, well, Arnold's more famous than Trump, so it's going to be millions. And at some level, I wanted that quote to come back as millions, because I'd put the goal out there and I'd told a few of my clients about it. And there was some part of me that wanted to have an excuse that when they came back to me and said, hey, Twiddle, how's that Schwarzenegger goal going for you? Every one of them would have understood, well, you understand, millions of dollars, I'm not that little guy who can afford, you know what I mean? It would have given me my excuse. And the scariest thing in the world happened. I put all the costings together, including whatever it cost to fly Arnold out and all that stuff. And it was still beyond my capability. It was more money than I had. It was more money than I couldn't afford it. But only just. And that was a scary position to be in. To be able to afford it, to not be able to afford it, but it not be insanely out of my reach, was the scariest thing in the world. That, you know what, I just had to say yes. And frankly, they said no to me first, and I said, well, what would it take? And, there was backwards and forwards and going on for months. But when it finally came down to me putting pen to paper and doing it, it was the scariest thing in the world, because I had no idea how to do it. I'm not a promoter. I've never done anything like this. I've done these little events, and the biggest thing I'd ever done was Eric Thomas taking pity on me and doing it for... See, E.T. calls it the homie discount, what he did it for me for, the homie discount. What's that in Australia? What's the homie discount in Australian parlance?
Mates rates. Love it.
Mates rates. Damn straight, right? So it was the scariest thing in the world when I thought, holy shit, this just got real. Are you telling me that if I say yes to this and give every dime I've got, mortgage my house, every penny I've got, if I call up every client I'm ever likely to get and beg for a year's coaching fees in advance, that I could work with Arnold Schwarzenegger? Is this real? And bugger me, within 6 months we'd done it. And I'm still pinching myself to this day that I get to now, that I've done this now a couple of times with Arnold, that he invited me to his house to a party, a month later, and that I went. I'm still pinching myself, man. A kid who grew up idolising Arnold Schwarzenegger, to have done this, boggles my mind still to this day.
How old are you now, Glenn?
44, man.
44? 80, just.
So 20 years after walking around with my mates, impersonating Arnold Schwarzenegger when I worked at a movie theatre promoting Terminator 2, and at the pub with my mates talking about the chilling out the dickwad and all of that, doing really bad Schwarzenegger impressions. Those same mates now, we look back now and we think, how did that happen? Because he put a post up on Facebook the other day, you probably would have saw it a couple of days ago, where Arnold Schwarzenegger is teasing me on his Facebook wall. You know what I mean? I still can't believe it. Yeah, it's been a wild ride, brother.
Oh, man. I guess when you get this kind of thing, it's... You go through a new norm. Like you said, you were hanging out with people who just... That's normal. I had this conversation with someone else the other day. When that becomes what you expect, your entire way of thinking changes, because that's what you need to do, so you just go about doing it. If that's what everyone in your circle is doing, it just becomes your new norm. And
you know what? My intellect, we talk about left brain, right brain, we talk about your IQ and your emotional side, however you want to word that, is that I intellectually know that what I've done, I should be just sitting here with my jaw on the ground going, how did that happen? Because you think about the amount of people who are between 38 years old and 48 years old, kind of my vintage. The amount of people who idolised Arnold when we were teenagers is in the millions. And how many have got to have done what I've done with Arnold, with Richard Branson? Because Richard, again, we haven't really talked about him much, but he's my adult entrepreneurial hero. And we did the same thing with Richard Branson. Worked with him, got to spend time with him. He had still left me to go to Necker and hang out with him. And he said to his PA, he said to lovely Debbie Dar, his assistant, make sure that when Glenn comes that I'm there and that we work out the timing so we can hang out together. I mean, the odds of me doing what I've done are millions to one. And I think to myself, I'm the one. And if the odds are millions to one, which they are, holy crap, I'm the one in millions to one. But here's the thing. The person that I had to become in order to pull it off had to visualize this stuff happening before it ever.
I think I just lost you, Glenn. You still there?
Happened. I had to visualize it daily. I had to make it my new norm. So really, I could do it all the time. Am I back? Am I back? Am I back?
Yeah, you're back. You can hear you now.
Tell me when I'm back, man.
You're back.
I'm back?
You're back.
Yeah, okay. Cool, man. I'm back and it's good?
Yeah, it's better now. It's weird. Just lost you for a second. It's all good.
It's because I'm driving on this horrible... It's a good road, but the reception is horrible. The awe that I should be feeling on an hourly basis, I have to kind of tap into it consciously and think, wow, you should be grateful for the life you get to live. And I am, but do know that I did have to do what you said. I had to make it my new normal in order to pull it off. You know what I mean?
Like I said, you've said it before, one event to another event to another event. And during that process, you obviously your social circle changes, the way of thinking of what you know is possible changes. The person you've become is obviously very different to the person you were when you thought, hey, why don't we just try out real estate thing?
Yeah, well, very much so. And here's the interesting thing. There's a few people who've stayed with me along that journey. Michael Spillane's one of them. Michael's the guy who got me into real estate, right? He's speaking on the stage with me with Arnold, in a couple of weeks' time. And I put a post up with me, Michael, and Arnold the other day, and I did just get a little introspective, and I said to Mick, and I said, mate, look at that. How the hell did that happen, man? Because we used to both work at the casino together in the 90s, and Michael, on the breaks at the casino, used to read books like Think and Grow Rich on the 20-minute breaks that we'd get between when we were dealing cards at the casino. He wouldn't be wasting his 20-minute breaks socialising and chasing girls or whatever we were all doing. He would be reading those books, and look at what he's done now. Multi-million-dollar agent, owns his own company, and now we're both speaking on the stage with Arnold Schwarzenegger. So it's been a wonderful ride. But you're right, is that there are other... I did develop new people where... I remember the first time I'd heard of a promoter hiring Richard Branson to come and speak at an event. And when I heard what those big major events cost, I thought I could never do that. And within a couple of years, I was doing exactly that. So it is interesting that we are the sum total of who we hang out with. And when they expose us to what's possible, it can open up new horizons. And so it all stems from me being at seminars like I run. In some cases, the seminars that I run now are the same mentors that I used to sit there and watch and learn from. And now that's why I give those same mentors back to my students, because, they're the ones that changed my life.
It's a trip when you go to a bookstore and realise that half the people you're looking at in the bookstore are your friends or you've worked with them in the past.
Unbelievable, man. Unbelievable. We got Alan Pease for the first time. I've never done an event with Alan, although I've done a couple of interviews and I've hung out with him a little bit. But Alan Pease said yes to come down to this one. So it's just an honour to be working with the people that I've studied with so much. Like, I added it up, about 7,000 hours of me listening to other experts,
Oh, wow.
That's a lot of mentors and a lot of people to give credit to. And I just keep asking everyone that I've ever learned something significant that's worked for me. I ask them to come to an event. Most of the time they say no, and every now and then they say yes, and it's my honour every time they say yes. This most recent event, it's the first time Natalie Cook has been available, and her and Kerry Pothast, what they did in the Sydney Olympics when they won their gold medal against the odds. It's an honour when these legends say yes to little old Glenn Twiddle from Ipswich,
What would you say who's your most... of all the people you've had on your shows, your interviews, your stage with you, or even just spoken to in your own learnings, who's been the most impactful in your journey so far? Or if you're a name a couple.
It probably is still Arnold. it's Arnold because of his impact on my childhood, right? But I didn't know that was going to be in an entrepreneurial sense back then. I didn't know he had his 6 rules that he based his life's success on. I just knew I loved his movies, But here's the one that was probably the biggest. It was a movie called Rudy, and a fella called Daniel Rudiger. They made a movie in the 90s about him starring Sean Astin. Magnificent movie, check it out. And it was a quote in that movie where Sean Astin, playing Rudy, looked at this priest when he was wanting advice, and he said, and I must have watched this movie hundreds of times, so I can quote it almost word for word. And he looked at this priest and he said, my whole life, people have been telling me what I could do and what I couldn't do, and I've always listened to them, believed in what they said. And then he looks at the priest with a steely gaze, because he's looking down when he says that. When he says, my whole life people have told me what I could do and couldn't do, and I've always listened to them, believed in what they said. Then he looks at the priest and he says, with a steely look in his eye, and he goes, I don't want to do that anymore. And it sends shivers up my spine when I hear it now, that his whole life he's listened to what's possible. Then he looks at this guy and says, I don't want to do that anymore. So it was really the movie Rudy. And then, actually, he was one of the first people that I interviewed. I reached out to Daniel Rudiger, the actual guy, not the character Sean Astin, not the actor Sean Astin, but the character that they based this movie on. And he said yes to a phone interview with me. So what I did is I put a bunch of my early students, there was probably 10 of them maybe, we watched the movie Rudy at my house in my home theatre,
Yes.
And we'd organised then to have a phone interview with Rudy when the movie was over. And, man, it was one of the real turning points. So now I've got an autographed Rudy poster that I wake up to every morning with a laminated, engraved plaque of that quote with my signed Rudy poster signed by Daniel Rudiger. And that's the quote that changed my life.
That's cool. Glenn,
You seen the movie, man? Check it out.
I haven't seen it, man. I want to check it out now. You've told me so much about it just then.
It's a winner, man.
Total Success
I can watch it on the 100th time and I'll still cry.
Total Success Summit. Is that a nod to Total Recall, or...?
Don't give it away. I might get in legal trouble. But you'll notice the font. Google the font of Total Recall, the movie, and the font of my event, and you might notice something pretty similar.
Okay.
Check out the last event I did with Arnold, and you'll notice it's a bit of a Terminator-y font. So, yeah, of course. I mean, Arnold's autobiography is called Total Recall, so it had to be Total Success, didn't
it? Of course. Well, you've got so many people here who could headline an event by themselves, like Michelle Bridges. She's a huge deal. John... Pretty much every one of these people could headline an event by themselves.
Yeah, I agree, mate. I wanted it to make it, because up until now I've mainly niched all this stuff and targeted just for my real estate friends. But the general public kept sneaking into my real estate events, right? Salespeople, entrepreneurs, business owners, they kept sneaking into my real estate events, and, a couple of speakers would say, so who's not a real estate agent? And years ago it would be one person out of 200. It started to be a quarter of the audience weren't agents. So I thought I'd better open it up to the general public. So I thought I would call in as many legends as I could, beg to come and hang out with us. And I'm really honoured that a couple of the people who said yes to me this time, it's like the universe lined up, and we got some absolute icons that agreed to come along. Many of them just to help me out. Because, I am still a little bloke with a relatively little business, that many of them reduced their fees in doing so. So I'm really thankful to all of the guys who helped me out, did it for less fee than they deserve, just in order to help us keep the ticket prices as low as we can. Because I tell you, if they were all charging their proper fees, it'd be $1,000 a head. And then we wouldn't be able to serve as many people as we can serve by them helping me out,
That's awesome. Man, what's been the best piece of advice you've received in your career?
You know what, it was probably after I did Arnold the first time, right, I had some smart aleck mates of mine, clients, saying, righto, idiot, you just did the best event.
I said, Arnold is a legend with himself within his own direct response business and what he did in real estate. What kind of stuff did you learn from him in that respect?
Oh, man. I mean, if I could recommend an audiobook to anyone, get Total Recall and listen to that man's story, because it's incredible. You know, like, they'll come and see him live in person and they'll get the crux of, they'll get the greatest hits. You know how you get a band's greatest hits and you just get all their hit singles, right? Well, that's what this event's going to be. In an hour and a half, they'll get his greatest hits and maybe get a photo with him or whatever. But spending 8 hours with that guy in his life story is a seminar that you couldn't put a price on. And what, you pay $20 for an audio book. You know what I mean? Absolutely. So, yeah, he's got, but those 6 principles that he talks about in his keynote speeches are literally, you know, are life-changing in and of themselves. My favourite one is probably, you know, working your ass off. You know, there's no substitute for the reps, he calls it. You know, you can't have done what he did without the grind. And so that's what Eric Thomas is all about. So a lot of my mentors, that's a common thread. But I'll tell you, your first question was the best piece of advice I got from these guys. And what happened was, after we did the first thing with Arnold, is people were asking me, one guy in particular said, what's next, Smart Alec? You've just pulled off the best event that anyone's ever pulled off in real estate. Now what are you going to do to top that? So I had a hit list of who I wanted for the next year. And Oprah was on that list, Michael Jordan was on that list, Jim Carrey, Richard Branson, of course, John Bon Jovi, Sylvester Stallone. I had 15 names that were my wish list. And Oprah, I contacted Oprah through a few people, and that never eventuated. She never even got back to me at all. Michael Jordan, actually, his people got back to me and said a resounding thank you, but no thank you. And Richard Branson's people got back to me and said, look, we're not planning on being in Australia or the region at this stage that year, but, and I read this email probably 100 times, so here's the quote. We're not looking at being in Australia or the Australia-Pacific region in 2016 at this stage, but, and I quote, it would be great if you could do something in September this year. 3 months from now, this was. And 3 months from now is no time to say yes to a major undertaking like that, especially when it's only a couple of months after you've done the event with Arnold Schwarzenegger. In every way, it was a mistake to say yes. But here's the long answer to your question. All that went through my head was a quote of Richard Branson's that says this: if you're presented with an opportunity and you don't quite know how to do it, say yes and figure it out later. And that's all that went through my head is, if Richard Branson wants to play with you, idiot, you say yes and you figure out whether it was a good idea later. You know? So that's the greatest advice ever. Is he's got a reputation and a nickname even as Dr. Yes. You know, it's a play on words on the James Bond villain Dr. No. Richard Branson's known as Dr. Yes. So I embrace as many opportunities as I can, and I say yes wherever possible, including, you know, I couldn't say yes to you to do this interview if I didn't do it while I'm driving in the middle of freaking nowhere while it's raining outside. We don't have an internet strong enough for video even, but this is my way of saying yes. So what are you going to do? Great advice.
Well, we connected via Instagram, didn't we?
I believe so. Yeah, we did. Yeah, another media that I'm a jack of all trades, but a master of none.
Exactly. Cool, man. So, what can we do? How can people attend this event? If they can't attend it live, is there any way for them to experience the goodness that is a Total Success Summit?
Yeah, just, you know, they can contact me, direct message me in any of the millions of inboxes that we now enjoy. Probably the ones I frequent the most on my Facebook inboxes, whether it's the page or whether it's my profile. So inbox me. I even check my other inbox. So if you do direct message me, it'll get to me. And I'll get them a copy of the recordings at cost, you know, because it is about the information. If you can be there live, one of the benefits of being there live, of course, and this isn't just my event, this is any event like this, is the people you sit next to can often be as valuable and network with and work the bar with after hours, you know. Those networking opportunities are often as valuable as the content you derive from the speakers. And the content that you derive from the speakers, of course, is messaging. So what that means is those connections you make at those events. That's how I got half my speakers. Is I meet them at an event, we develop some relationship, and then months later I say, hey, I'm at an event, you want to come? So, of course, there's a benefit to being there live, but if they can't be, just get them to, guys, message me. It is me that mans my social media channels, and, I'll get you a copy of the recordings at cost. We don't do these things for profit. Profit comes later in my world. If I can cover my cost and get someone new to experience my world by me selling these home study courses of whatever event it is I'm doing at cost, then that's me acquiring it for free, who might embrace what I'm doing and might engage me later. So that's one of my big takeaways, is if you can acquire a client or a potential customer at break even or better, you should dance in the streets. Mm-hmm. Because that client, if you do a good job, will be a customer for life that will profit for you far in excess of any initial profit you could have got on the first point of contact.
Mm-hmm. Somebody gets in real estate, that's amazing. Quite possibly the only...
that's certainly true of most businesses. You know what I mean? Go ahead.
I said you're quite possibly the only person in Australia I know who's actually embraced that concept fully.
Oh, dude, I walk my talk, man. This event many of my events, I don't know. You never know till the end. But all I know is I'm willing to not even break even on my large events. Why? Because I get 2,000 new potential customers, of which 50 might buy some cool stuff one day in the future. And if I get 50 new good... here's how this principle paid off for me. It was last year... No, year before. So maybe a year and a half ago. My clients got together, 20 or 30 of them got together, and not because it wasn't charity, I didn't need it, but they bought me a Harley Davidson, just a $1,000 motorbike, just to say, thanks, mate. Because I embraced this concept of giving far more than I take, It's the old Zig Ziglar quote, man, helping other people get what they want, you get what you want. They knew I liked Harleys, and they knew I didn't have one because I've been so busy and stuff, and I sold my Harley early in the piece to buy into my first real estate company, so they knew I rode Harleys, they knew I liked them, they knew I'm not much of a car guy, so they chipped in and bought me a freaking Harley Davidson as a tip. And in this country, in Australia, we don't have a tipping culture. And they just bought me that just to... It's a great attitude to embrace. If you own a restaurant and you serve good food, why wouldn't you just give away free food for a week and win a client for life? The only way that can fail is if you suck at what you do. Then you're going to go broke quicker. But if you're good at what you do, get them in. I hate to use this analogy, but it's the drug dealer clothes. Here you go. You take this one on me, and if you want any more, come back to me. Put negative connotations out of drugs and say, if the thing you've got is desirable, let them sample it for free, and they'll come back for more if what you've got's any good.
Nice. That is awesome, my friend. I think the final note, where can people go to learn more about you?
Thanks, man. I'll do my best.
You did good, especially on the road.
Sorry, go ahead, bro.
Where can people go to learn more about you and the...
Are we still...
Yeah, we're still live. Where can people learn more about you and the event if they want to book their own tickets today?
Cool, man. Well, I tell you, I would say any marketer who is worth his bot, all they need to do is say their name. So you don't need a website, you don't need a whatever, just Glenn Twiddle, you'll find me. And if I'm not worth it, like if you can't find me by me just saying Glenn Twiddle, then you're not allowed, I forbid you to come and learn marketing from me. Because any marketer worth their salt doesn't need to tell you how to be found, because they put themselves in every place where it is possible to find someone. You know what I'm saying? So they'll find me if they want me.
No, I think I lost you there. But what I was saying was, where can they book tickets for the event and to your own website?
Yeah, but again, all I'm saying is, if I'm, I would say that if they can't find my event, then I'm not a marketer's arsehole. Does that make sense?
Makes sense. Cool, brother.
So Glenn Twiddle, you'll
Glenn
find
Twiddle.
me.
Search him up, guys. Look him up. Search for him.
Business cards typed up.
Glenn Twiddle, you'll
I
find me.
want to get business cards printed up that just says Glenn Twiddle. Google me.
See, then you got some arsehole who goes in and does negative SEO on you.
Yeah, man, I tell you, you'd be doing well to out SEO my SEO. Oh, jeez. Actually, you know what's interesting? No, I don't want to tell you this one because too many people will Google it, and then you know what? I'm going to take a punt on your audience, man. I've never said this ever because I don't want too many people Googling this phrase because you know how when you Google a phrase, so often it becomes a predictive Google or whatever. Yeah. Like Google predicts that that's going to be the thing. Yeah. If you Google Glenn Twiddle complaint or Glenn Twiddle scam, have a look at what the number one match is for that search phrase. Because I did exactly what you're saying. You know, I put a completely edifying post as the first couple of posts on Glenn Twiddle scam, Glenn Twiddle complaint, and all of that, where someone genuinely did complain, right? But then 200 of my clients jumped on and smashed him about how awesome I am.
Oh, this is brilliant. Okay, guys, if you haven't searched yourself...
What a way to, you know, negative...
If you guys haven't searched this for yourselves, what he's done is SEO on a... for this Glenn Twiddle complaint, and has a slideshow where he's just got people singing his praises, page after page after page after page.
In answer to a guy kind of complaining a little bit. And that's what's critical, is one guy had a little whinge saying the only people who gets rich out of my seminars is me, and then pages of my people who I've helped jumping on there leaping to my defense. Best testimonial ever.
That's brilliant. Awesome, man. That's brilliant. You seem to have... Oh, it's everywhere too. It's great.
Yeah, man, I do my best, but like you said, man, I'm a master of none of this stuff, you know? Yeah. You're better at so much of this stuff than I am, but I'm adequate at so many of them that I give it a good nudge.
That's all you need sometimes, as long as you're pushing it out.
Yeah.
You seem to be doing quite well.
I heard some advice. Here's some good advice that I didn't invent it. I didn't invent anything that I teach, man, is it's better to be there than be good. Because how many times have we bought something from someone who wasn't good, but who was just simply there so often with the thing we wanted? So now, is it important to be good at what you do? Of course. But it's more important to be there.
Definitely. Most people don't even bother to show up. You should. I think you might have kind of said this before. Yep. Most people, the reason why they succeed isn't because they're the smartest person in the room. It isn't because they're exceptionally talented, although they do work hard and they tend to be pretty damn good at what they do, because there are people who intellectually should surpass them, but they show up day after day after day. They show up and do the work and improve on their
everyone should out-surpass me. Everyone. Because I never earned more than 40 grand a year until I found this real estate thing, and I thought I was a genius, earning 40 grand a year, 50 grand a year maybe, playing guitar for a living. I thought I was a freaking financial genius because I was earning as much as many of my friends, and I was doing so in a, couple of nights a week playing guitar. So, I had nothing was handed to me. So everyone should be outperforming me, and many of course are. I mean, I'm no Richard Branson, put it that way. But the fact that I've done what I'm doing, man, it was not by anything other than learning what other smart people have got to teach, executing what they taught me, and having a crack.
Love it. Man, thanks again so much. I think on that note, we better let everyone get back to their days. And, guys, take a look at his website. Go search him. You'll find him. And if you are in Australia, in Sydney, on, I think, the March 22nd, come along to the event.
Yeah, come and hang out. Come and say g'day and tell me you were on this little insane stream that we decided to do. And I'll see if I can find some freebies and some goodies to give you, just as a reward for putting up with this level of unprofessionalism.
Hey, you promised me some F-bombs and nothing got dropped, so I'm kind of disappointed.
So wait a minute, I'll just turn this back on. There you go. I'll make sure I turn this on to wave goodbye. Thank you guys for tuning in. Crazy, and I hope you got something out of that.
Hello, I'll put the picture back on. There you go. Alright, see you guys.